So like the viable variations are quite small, and this is part of the reason, they such a wider range of no. Anyway, I'll just keep going. To kind of restate this, you may have billions upon billions of possible viable branches, but for each viable path of evolving, there's a great many more paths that for any given environment are not viable. This, in my view, is rather the foundation of the idea of natural selection. As things move and change and mutate from generation to generation, there are various items that are shown to be advantageous in the given overall environment. As the genetic manifestations aid in the progression of that particular strain, they are considered to be something that makes it that strain more fit. And those strains that either end or do not continue forward with the relative strength of other strains are not then consequently not considered fit. It's important to remember that simply because an element is present universally or almost universally does not mean that it is a useful manifestation for the continued progress of any of those creatures that either hold it or are affected by it. So simply having something present throughout nature does not make it something inherently good or useful. This is often taken as a claim by those antipathetic to theism or the idea of a theistic creation as evidence that God goofed. That if there's flaws in what's created, then the Creator was the cause of that. But the problem is that this comes from a view of either an ex nihilo or an ex deo creation. That is, where God supposedly created everything out of nothing or out of himself. And that would make sense, this claim that it's God's fault, because it's often called the problem of evil. Because clearly if evil didn't exist and then God did something that caused it to come into existence, then that God would be the ultimate responsible agent or creation of the evil, corruption, etc. Well, I'm not trying to digress here, seeing as I'm not making God a pretext in the presentation of the defense of my view. I do want to point out the answer to your comment on the phrase found in God Loveth His Children pamphlet, when it says that those who are not able to honestly marry in this life through no fault of their own, that is through no fault of their own, you respond with the query, whose fault is it then? In my view, it can be no one's, because with the philosophical foundations of my theistic view have creation ex materia, that is, creation in which everything created that is formed into its present state was created in the sense that it was formed from matter that is and always has been coexistent with God. So elements that cause either evil or corruption are not things chosen by or proceeding from God. In short, our view that is, in some form or another, the core of our being has always existed in some manifestation or another. If this would at all be something you'd want to discuss in the future, I'd be open to that. But I don't want to get off track too much, and I want to get back to the issue as tied to your non-theist view. Back to the idea of things being universal or not universal in nature, but not being advantageous or fitness-enhancing measures in any way. That is, some traits or tendencies found in any number of living things can be strictly detrimental to its fitness, yet be universal or almost universally present in the whole context of a biological world. So not all things in nature or things natural are good for life. Nature as a whole, or for the groups or subgroups in which they're manifested, are not always good for life. So the likes of Hitchens and Dawkins are with me on this. So I don't anticipate any objection from you, though I'd be open to any exceptions that you would want to make and would be willing to defend with regard to this. I just want to say that I really, really don't like reading this off because it just doesn't seem so detached, but I just can't think of a better way to get out what I'm trying to say, so please bear with me on this. I really wish I had a better memory or a better capacity to be fluid in my thoughts and precise and concise, but I'll continue on here. Another element to consider is with regard to the presence of traits is what is termed epigenetics, and I'm pretty sure you know about this, but I'll go over this. Epigenetics, for anyone unfamiliar with the term, is a component of our genetics that makes it so that genetically identical creatures can have vastly different tendencies or traits or trait manifestations. Epigenetics can essentially turn on or turn off various pieces of our genetic material and thereby affect the manifestations of such. So they've been able to take genetically identical rats and have one be obese, albino and red-eyed, with its genetic twin being fit and properly proportioned with brown fur and dark eyes. This is simply by affecting variations in the epigenetic factors that they've discovered. So things like epigenetics mean that the choices made by oneself, by one's parents, by one's grandparents, and even your great-grandparents, and I don't know how far back they effectively go in epigenetics, but all these things done or not done, consumed or experienced or whatever, can affect the way in which one's genome is manifested in their life. So I mean, the things we do can affect the way our genome is manifested, but they will also affect our children and our children's children to some degree or another, how the genes are manifested. But this is another element then that I'm placing next to the principle that universal or nigh-universal traits not being good for all, for enhancing the fitness of a creature or species, or even the whole tree of life. So with these items, I think it's demonstrable that not all that is natural is either ideal or life-promoting, or even promoting anything positive in either the raw mechanics of life nor in the desirability of life. So a defense that simply cites something as being natural is not tenable on its own. It's important when we address things such as universal or nearly universal trait manifestations that we remember that causation and correlation shouldn't get confused with each other, so that we're not taking, simply because something is present everywhere doesn't mean that it's necessarily something that's good for nature or good for even everybody or every element of nature. Next up, you say with regard to marriage that you don't think anyone has a right to define what that is. And in the context of just human relations, you're right. You can certainly give whatever label you wish to your arrangements and interactions. Humans do have the right to self-determination, and the labels that they choose and the paths that they pursue are theirs to choose, inasmuch as they don't infringe upon the rights of other humans. This is the understanding I believe exists, and I believe is correct and right. Now I'm going to share some segments from the book, The Empty Cradle. As a preface to the book, it's an analysis of world demographic trends, both past and modern, and we'll look at this state of the world's demographics and the realities of its demographic future. I do not agree with many of the views or opinions held by the author, but the numbers, in my opinion, line up with his assessments as to the present state of the world and the direction and momentum of current demographic trends throughout the world. If this seems a little disconnected, just hold on. I hope you'll see the relevance as I get into this.